We simply put those rockers in rows and had a center aisle. And they loved it, and it worked. It was a small wedding. You know, what you lose, and this is true whether it's rockers or not, when you go from pews to worshiping in the round, you're going to lose at least 50% of your seating capacity. But, you know, when you only have 15 people worshiping, you're not losing a lot. And that's, you know, the seating is an interesting thing. There have been a few times where we can get about 40 in that circle, and we usually have around 30 people worshiping, but occasionally we'll have 50 or 60 people come out, and the second you create that second row, the second that it's no longer that one circle, everything about the dynamics in that room changes. It's absolutely amazing. So, to be honest, if we grow, I'll go to a second service before I'll put in a second row of chairs. Because as one of the folks that are a regular attendee, as he said, we don't know each other by the backs of our heads. And that's a big thing. That's a big thing. Yeah.
You talk that you do discussion rather than preaching. What guides you on what the topic is? I mean, is it something that's discussed among the group beforehand, or what guides you on what you're going to discuss?
I usually take the privilege of deciding that in the same way that I would decide what my scripture was and subject was for a sermon. I am not following the lectionary because, again, I want to be sensitive to those who have not been in church for many, many, many years. So I wanted to start with basics. I began with the Sermon on the Mount, and we spent close to 6 months on the Beatitudes alone. I just really wanted to get into detailed discussion about the teachings of Christ and just get people kind of caught back up and re-familiar, reoriented to those teachings.
As a follow-up on that, then, you said that it's very a cohesive discussion. Was that something that was talked about ahead of time, that you wanted to keep the discussions that way, or did it just naturally happen?
The cohesiveness?
Yeah.
It naturally happened. The smartest thing I've done with Wild Goose is to get out of its way. It's been the most organic process that I've ever seen in my life. To give you an example, I wanted to start with a potluck, and one of the great things about a potluck supper before the worship service is that, you know how when we come to church on Sunday morning, everybody's coming from either their home or they've been out to eat breakfast, or, you know, we're all coming, some people come from Sunday school, some people aren't. We all come from these different places, and then we come into the sanctuary, and on a good Sunday, we form community through that worship service. At Wild Goose, we had the opportunity to form community. Whether it's the first time you've been there or you've been coming the whole 2 years, we form community sitting around the table with each other, and then as a community, move into that worship space. And that is an amazing difference. That was not something I had planned. Very wise, older church women told me not to have that potluck after the service because everybody would be hungry, the food would be cold, and half the people would have to leave to go fix it. So I said, okay, we'll do it from the beginning. So it was unintentional, but it has turned out to be one of the greatest things about how we do worship. So, yes, sir.
Along the same lines of those, as you started the discussions groups, right, to begin with, as you started this church, what was the process of getting them to start to open up, to try to get a discussion going in the first place?
That's a great question. It was just trial and error to come up with questions that would be evocative enough to get people talking. And as the community got to know itself better, people were more and more free. But you know, the process really isn't that different than a Bible study, if you do it in a discussion way. You try to come up with questions that are meaningful to people and give them an opportunity to not be intimidated by their lack of education or experience, but can share something that's real to them about their experience or their relationship with Jesus Christ. So just try to be as inviting as I possibly could. And to pick scripture that would speak to them. So, yeah.
I was wondering what the, I was wondering if you still have the same sort of councils in the church that you might have in a more traditional Presbyterian church. Do you have a session? Do you have elders, deacons?
We don't. We've talked about what we would like to kind of evolve into. And we've pretty much decided we don't want to be an organized, accepted church with all those pieces. Reason being is that our ministry really is to people who have not had a good experience with traditional church. So for us to become more of that, it seems to us, and not just to me, but to all of us, it's going to be in direct opposition with who we're trying to reach. So the way it's set up, and again, I love the partnership with the Presbytery. The Presbytery made the Church Development Committee the administrative commission over Wild Goose. So it serves as our session. It provides the authority and the leadership from that standpoint, and provides the organizational piece for the partnership beyond just the Wild Goose community. And I think we'll stay with that model for a while. Yeah.
So do you have statistics that you keep for the Presbyterian Church?
Very loosely, Tom. I have to report. I meet with the Church Development Committee, which is the administrative commission for us. I meet with them, and I'm a member of that committee. So I meet with them every time and have to give a report, and I let them know, but not the kind of statistics that we would turn in to GA, because we're not a church.
Not a church.
Yeah. Gary.
Edwin, you have served a couple of previous pastorates in long-established churches of
Yes.
very different kinds and styles. How would you compare the level of joy and fun in ministry in what you're doing now to what you were doing then? Where does the joy and fun come from?
First of all, it's really weird for you to raise your hand and ask me a question.
Cherish the moment.
I kind of like it. I'll answer your question. Face it, guys. This is a dream come true. I'm a minister who was given an empty church, $500,000 in 5 years to do whatever I wanted to do. That ever happen? And I don't have to be there on Sunday mornings. This happens, So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I get to play my banjo every year. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to do this. One of the most, when I have people that are there every Tuesday night that haven't been in church in 30 years, I feel like God is using me to do something truly meaningful in this particular place at this particular time. I love traditional church. I love small church. The church that I was serving before when I found out about the little Indian Valley church closing and started working on Wild Goose was a 500-member church, largest church in the Presbytery. We're a very small church, or a very small Presbytery. And I liked it. It was the first larger church experience I'd ever had, and I was the associate. And there were a lot of things I liked about it. I liked having a nice facility. I liked having a decent budget. I loved having the volunteer base and some very, very bright and well-educated people that brought a lot to the table in that congregation. that was a lot of fun. I love the family feel and the deep traditions of small rural church. I love, I love the fact that families have ancestors that worshipped in those pews. Because my family, there's a couple of churches near where I grew up that my ancestors built those churches, and I've always had family in those pews. So I understand that and love it and appreciate it. But for me as an individual, this is absolutely godsend. I mean, God's being very, very, very nice to me right now. So, and I'm appreciating it as long as it lasts.
How did you get people in there to begin with?
Word of mouth for the most part. I went around the community and asked how people communicated with each other. Whether they used newspaper or television or radio, how you get the word out. And they said, well, we have 2 bulletin boards and people put up flyers and people really do come by and look. So I put flyers on those bulletin boards and also at the little country stores around where people would see. And also asked the other Presbyterian churches around to kind of seed it a little bit for us the first few times. And so through all of that, we got a little group going. And then a friend of mine who is an atheistic Jew decided he wanted to promote this, which just tickles me to death. And he called his friend with the local national public radio station and had them come out and do an article. And that reached more people than anything else we've ever done. And that article ended up winning a very prestigious NPR prize and went national. So it was amazing what my atheistic Jewish friend did for Wild Goose. But it's really been word of mouth more than anything. I haven't really done any advertising. But the newspapers have, the local newspapers, local television, they have all done pieces on it, but it's got the word out, but it didn't get us anybody through the door. So.
Does your relationship include pastoral care for the people that attend your church?
That's a really interesting question. I don't want to go too long. We're at 1:30, so Jeff, you can pull the plug whenever. That's a really interesting question because, like I said, 40% of the folks coming there have a pastor. The other thing that's really interesting is it has provided a place for pastors to come and worship with their families, which I didn't see that coming, but that's been a gift on both sides. So what I do is I just take it as an individual situation. If it's somebody that I think would be open to pastoral care and they don't have a pastor, then I make myself available. If it's somebody that's not ready to be that involved in church again, I give them the space that they want. If it's somebody who already has a pastor, I will confer with their pastor to see how we want to handle the pastoral care needs. But that part is really evolving because we're still evolving as a community. We're still kind of figuring out what our identity is and how we're doing this.
How about we do one more?
Sure. Okay. Yes.
And just tell us about the music, the singing. What does it sound like and feel like?
It is wonderful. We have, depending upon the night, anywhere from 2 musicians to 10 or 12 musicians. Every other month, we have a square dance, so we usually have more musicians that night. After the service, we'll have a square dance. And it is wonderful to hear those old hymns and old gospel songs played in the traditional Appalachian instruments in the context of the worship. And all the music that is incidental to the worship service is all Appalachian. It really more than anything, it helps that feel of really celebrating the Appalachian culture. And I'll end with this, again, to let you know how organic this whole process was. Being a musician, when we were planning Wild Goose, I was desperate to put together a band. I thought, this was going to be a central piece of the whole experience, and I really wanted to have kind of a top-notch band as the house band, so to speak. And I could not get any of my friends to work out to where they could commit on that night. It wasn't that they weren't willing, they just couldn't. And what happened was that the band grew out of people I'd never even met before, but Wild Goose itself drew that group of musicians and was a better band than I ever could have dreamed of. So again, just happened organically. It happened through God's grace. All of us have happened through God's grace. Thank you so much.
So Nancy's question was a great segue. And a reminder that Edwin will be open tonight at 7:30. I think there are tickets still at Heritage Center in the box office. I think they're on, it's not quite a fire sale, but they're very affordable. And we'll be able to get a taste of that music tonight. Edwin, thank you. We're proud of you. You have the last word.
Just wanted to let you know I have some basically rack cards. If you want to grab one, and it's got our website on it and stuff. If you want to learn more about Wild Goose, they're on here. So thank you.